Hello, I'm Mark Pugac and welcome to Game On. We're all living in a Pep Guardiola world. How long can this amazing winning run go on for? Arsenal edge past Benfica in Athens, Arsenal supposedly at home of course, and Leicester crash out of Europe. Joining us to discuss all this, the former Doncaster Belles and England winger Sue Smith, Tony Cottee, who played for England, Everton and West Ham, and the Daily Mail's chief sports writer, Martin Samuel. Hello, everybody. Good to see everyone looking so well. Sue, welcome along. Thank you for being with us. Let's start with the Europa League. Let's start with Europe this week, Sue. Arsenal put their fans through it, don't they? And the extraordinary thing is that their best player is a 19-year-old, isn't he? Bukayo Saka. I mean, he is on a different level, it seems, to a lot of his teammates.
He's been absolutely brilliant. And I think he has been the key often this season. I think when Arsenal have looked for a little bit of inspiration, it's often been him. He's been the one that has stepped up. And I think the concern for Arsenal fans and I suppose Arsenal in general is you just don't want to burn him out because he is still so young, but he's been so key for Arsenal. And like you say, there was a little bit of a scare. I was really pleased for Aubameyangs actually to go on and get the winner. And I think that was important. Sometimes I think when it's a game like that and it's so, you have to really fight back, you have to get that win. Sometimes it means even a little bit more.
Tony, it would have been very Arsenal to go out on away goals in Athens. But anyway, it didn't come to pass, luckily for them. You'd like to have played with Saka, wouldn't you, the way you put Aubameyangs through for both goals?
Yeah, he's been fantastic, hasn't he, Mark? And it's interesting how I think Arsenal's best players this year have been the youngsters, isn't it? Smith Rowe as well has really come into the fore as well. So it's great. Arsenal have always produced great youngsters. We know that. The through ball for the little dink for Aubameyangs was absolutely sublime. It really was. And, Aubameyangs made it look easy, but it wasn't an easy chance. But you only get the chance to do that technique if there's a real quality of weight on the ball, and the pass from Saka was just fantastic and great finishing. Arsenal through, as we always say in cup football, it doesn't always matter how you play. Obviously it's different where it's two legs, but it doesn't matter how you play. The main thing is to get into the next round. And unlike my old team Leicester that I watched last night, then who are not in the next round, at least Arsenal are in the next round.
Yeah, what about Leicester? Reading the paper this morning, the Rodgers spring curse. This is the fifth time it's happened at this stage, twice with Liverpool, twice with Celtic. We know they faded away last season, literally on the final day, not to get the Champions League spot. Maddison's injured. Is there any part of you, Tony, that's thinking, oh no, please not again, Leicester. You've played so well for so long. Don't, they feel like there's 2 furlongs to go every season, then they start to hit the wall.
I hope that's not the case. I mean, up until last night, I've been really, really pleased with Leicester. I do stuff for the club. I watch them very closely. I think whenever they've had a defeat, Mark, which is key, they bounce back straight away. And they've got to do that. I know we're going to talk about the game at the weekend, and they've got Arsenal home at the weekend when they need to bounce back. But last night, it was such a poor performance. It really was dreadful. And I'm very unlike Leicester. There was just, they had sort of the spine of the team were playing, as in Schmeichel and Didi, Tielemans, Evans, Soyuncu, Jamie Vardy up front. That spine was in place and they just didn't perform. And I know he made 4 changes, but it just was a really, really disappointing performance. But listen, it happens. It does happen in the course of the season. Every team, even Man City, I know it was earlier in the season, not at the moment, but every team has a blip where you have a poor performance. And let's hope that's Leicester's real poor performance of the season out of the way and they bounce back at the weekend.
What more can we say about Man City, Martin? I mean, Cancelo was the star this week, wasn't he?
Fabulous, fabulous. I mean, what he does, what the guy has done with what Pep has done with fullbacks, and is incredible, and it will have an impact on football for decades ahead. People will still be imitating and trying to develop the ideas that you suddenly see from in a Pep Guardiola team that no one else is doing.
If you look at what Man City are trying to do, and I think the way we're heading, this is only my opinion, the way we're heading, I think managers in future, the only 3 defensive players they're going to want are the 2 centre-halves and the holding midfield player. And that really is what I know City are slightly different, but I'm talking about other teams. They will look at what City are doing. In other words, what we used to call a fullback. You won't have fullbacks anymore because we already know that position's changed, and they don't look at how they defend. They look at how good they are at getting forward, like a Cole Walker, like other players, Ben Chilwell, whatever. It's more about getting forward rather than how they are defensively. So we'll end up with which can only be good for the game because we'll have 3 defensive players And then you've got 7 attacking players plus a goalkeeper that you're talking about. So it can only be good for the game.
I actually see a lot of wingers now transformed into fullbacks because that is the position. It's very much, can you go forward? Can you make something happen? And you find yourself actually now saying, oh, actually, we've got a fullback that's a good defender as well, because the majority of fullbacks are your creators, and it is great to see. And even when you look at Manchester City, you look at their 2 centre halves, they're brilliant on the ball, Diaz and Stones. So yes, we're talking about how strong they've become defensively this season, but when they're on the ball, they're the ones that can start those attacks off, and the holding midfielder, yes, they look to break up play, but also when they're on the ball, you think, wow, they are gonna create something, they are gonna make something happen. So it is the way that football's moving, and it's just great to watch. Manchester City must be a nightmare to play against, just because of their movement and their rotation. They're brilliant.
Tony, I'll tell you the other team that are really fascinating me at the moment in the Champions League and the Premier League is Chelsea. They've clearly, the players responded tactically to what he wants. He's incredible. I mean, he's obviously very intense, very particular. We saw the Hudson-Odoi last weekend, which maybe he was trying to make a point to the whole squad. But the way they won that game at Atletico was very impressive, wasn't it, in terms of their patience and their perseverance?
It was, and against a good Atletico team as well. I know they've had a little blip in their form. I know they're up the top of the league, but I think they've had a slight blip in terms of their form. But, Chelsea, since he took over, I've said, I think I said on this show that, how disappointed about I was that they got rid of Frank. I felt he deserved more time, but you know what they're like, they make their decisions. But I've also said as well, you can't fault the Chelsea model, because their model is, if you ain't doing it, you're out, and we get the next one in. And they brought Tuchel in, and to be fair, he's changed it from the point of view, he's gone for the experience, which I think if you're probably in a bad run of form as a club and as a team, you probably need the experienced players to come in just to settle things down a bit, try and get a bit of form, get a few results on board. And he's done really well from that point of view. I sort of admire him in a way for what he did with Hudson-Odoi, but I also think if I put myself in that position, if I was the player, then I would be, wow, I'm not having this guy. He can't do things like that to me. It's not a nice feeling when that happens. But would he have
done it to a more experienced player, Tony? I think that's the question. Has he deliberately done it to a youngster to make the point to the rest of the dressing room? Would he have done it to an Alonso or a Kante or somebody?
And also, you're going to get sacked at Chelsea anyway, so you might just as well do whatever you want, really. I mean, if you're going to get sacked, you can't, basically, when they appoint the next Chelsea, when they appoint a new manager, you've been appointed the next Chelsea manager to be sacked, basically, in probably 2 years, with everyone going, cool, that was a bit harsh. So, so you might just as well do whatever you want to do. And he's got this, I'm amazed that he doesn't play Reece James. He plays a wing-back system. I can't think there's a better right wing-back at the club than Reece James. I mean, I think he's an outstanding young player. But he's playing Hudson-Odoi for whatever reason, maybe because in most games that Chelsea play, they are going to have to be on the front foot. There's going to be very few matches in a season in which Chelsea don't have to make the play, because people will set up defensively against them. They'll set up to contain them. So maybe he wants an out-and-out attacker as his right wing-back. But to get that, he's got to get Hudson-Odoi to have the discipline of a defender as well. And you haven't got time at Chelsea, so you need to get on with it pretty damn quick, basically, which is what he's done with Hudson-Odoi. Right, this is what I need. If you're not up to speed, you're going to get hooked after half an hour. It's up to you, mate. And then he picks him.
Are we going to have more Champions League football? This current format runs till 23-24. And interesting that UEFA's proposals this week for a Swiss-style Champions League from 24 were not challenged by a single association. So I was doing a meeting earlier this month, which means that we could go from 32 to 36 clubs in the Champions League, ergo more Champions League football. Is that really what we need?
It was always going to be this, Mark. That's the answer to everything. The answer to everything is more. Right, if they're not making the money, more. Right, let's just play more. We play more games. We'll do more. More teams in them. It's harder. It's harder to fail to qualify for the European Championships now than it is to get into it. The World Cup will go the same way. The World Cup will go to 50 teams eventually. So that will be 1 in 4 countries get there. And the Champions League is now, it was champions, and it was then the second place team, and now it's the fourth place team, and they're trying to have a discussion where, you know, if you're so useless, you've come seventh, you might still be able to get in there because, you know, you were very good 5 years ago. And this is the way modern football is, and none of these guys have got any plan other than more. That's all it is, more.
So you think this will go through then? Probably they will expand.
I think it will go through on the nod. The only discussion will be over these historical places. The two worst teams you could possibly imagine getting into the Champions League that happen to have a good coefficient. That might take a little bit of debate, because there might be some associations that actually, to, you know, the risk of being crude, grow a pair and turn around and say this is not right. You can't come seventh and go into the Champions League because you were good 5 years ago. You know, it's meant to be a meritocracy. That's what it's meant to be. And that changes every single year. And if you're not good, you don't get in. And that's what, if you look at what's happened to Arsenal, this colossal drift that's happened at Arsenal, it happened because there was no incentive to get better. You know, because you could come fourth and get into the Champions League. If you could come, say, take Liverpool. If Liverpool were to finish outside those top four places this season, by some miracle, they came outside the top four places. But you could still get in anyway. They could come seventh, and because they've got a very high coefficient, they could still get in. What actual motivation would there be for FSG to invest massively in improving that team if you can just coast along and you still get the gravy at the end of it? Where's your incentive? That's what happened at Arsenal. They could just coast along and they still got the gravy and it still kept the money coming in. And now, hey presto, mid-table.
Instead, what we're saying, Tony, is that, you know, we'll get to West Ham's season in a second properly, but West Ham could come fifth, let's say, but under this system, maybe not get in because Liverpool or Arsenal or Tottenham come seventh, and they've got more of a history when it comes to European football and a bigger coefficient.
Yeah, to be honest, Mark, it gets on my nerves, the so-called top six. You know, being a West Ham fan, you know, like you just get it rammed down your throat all the time. The top six this and the top six that. It shouldn't be about the top six. You know, Martin's made some really good points, but for me, you know, when it went from the European Cup to the Champions League, by definition, it should have been champions, but it's not champions anymore. So the name of the competition needs to go for a start, because that's a ridiculous name, Champions League. It doesn't make sense. And then when you look at the current format, regardless of who's in it, the group stages are a waste of time now, because like you pretty much can say, well, there's a group of four. We know who the top two teams are going to be. So they're playing 6 games almost for no reason. There's no competitiveness. So I think it all needs to be restructured. What worries me, who is going to make the decision? Who's going to make the changes? Have we got a load of old boys over in Europe who are the usual stuff on the UEFA panel, who haven't got a clue about football, who are going to dream up some format? They don't talk to the managers. They don't talk to the players. They don't talk to the coaches. They don't talk to the pundits. They don't talk to the supporters. And then they dream up some format and say, well, let's get on with it for the next 10 years. It drives me mad. It's the same, you know, whether it's UEFA, FA, FIFA, you know, they don't consult the people that are actually involved in football to come up with a product that all of us and everyone else in the world is happy with.
Celtic. Neil Lennon's quite often going back, doesn't work, and it certainly didn't in his case. Who would you like to see take over there? What sort of manager do you think they should be after at Celtic?
I think it's a huge job, isn't it, for anyone who comes in? They have to make the right choice. I suppose it's a manager that can, I suppose, reshape a squad in a way. I know they've got some great players, but I do think they need to bring in more players, and it's someone who can maybe start that building process over a few transfer windows. I know that Eddie Howe's been linked. I know Steve Clarke's been linked, hasn't he? But I've heard a few of the ex-Celtic players mention the RB Salzburg coach. Is it Jesse Marsh? And they were saying that he just fits the profile, and he thinks a little bit outside the box, and, you know, he'll find out about what the club want, what the fans want. And I think that's probably important from a Celtic perspective. So I'm going with the ex-Celtic players and sort of throwing his name in there.
Nice. I'll throw a name in, which would be great, which would be Frank Lampard. You know, imagine Gerrard and Lampard. I think He's in the betting. You know, it wouldn't surprise me if he was to go up there and have a go. It's an attractive job. You know, as an outsider, you've got, if you want to throw some fireworks, you put Roy Keane in charge. You know, there's plenty of options for Celtic, isn't there? You know, Martin O'Neill, another old manager. But I don't think they'll go down that route because they've just done that way with Neil Lennon. So I think they'll look for a fresh start with someone. But for me personally, how about Lampard and Gerrard up in Glasgow? That'd be good, wouldn't it?
Oh, can they play with each other? Can they play against each other, Martin? How good would that be?
No,
I mean, as I say, Gerrard's cast a big shadow over whatever they do at Parkhead,
absolutely.
hasn't
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I was wrong. I think a lot of people were wrong about Steven Gerrard going to Rangers because I thought it was crackers to go there at that time. You just couldn't see anybody getting ahead of Celtic. You looked at the level of players that Rangers were buying at that stage, and they were championship players, and not even the championship players that the Premier League teams were after. And you just thought, this is a dead end job. This is a way of, you know, ruining your reputation, ruining your start of your managerial career. He's done a fabulous job. He really has done a magnificent job there. All I would say about the Celtic job is there's no Scottish managers. And this is, I'm not saying I've got a big list of Scottish managers here that I think should do it, but there are no Scottish managers because we've got a load of them down here, and it's always been this great, you know, this great tradition of Scottish coaches that have been, you know, very successful in English football. There was a fellow at Manchester United, I seem to remember, did all right. And I'm always amazed that when the Celtic job comes up, everybody talks in terms of a foreign coach, everyone talks of an English coach or whatever, and no one ever talks about the coaches they've got up there. And then they come down and they work, say, in the Championship or whatever, and often do rather well.
Let's have a look ahead to the weekend. Chelsea-Manchester United, Sue. That is a big game. We've talked a lot about Tuchel, and Manchester United are doing well. They're not doing as well as they'd want to, but they're, you know, if I were a bookmaker and I said, well, we'll take Man City out of the betting, then you would probably have them favourites to finish top of that particular league.
Yeah, I think it was an important win, wasn't it, for Manchester United against Newcastle? Maybe not the performance that they necessarily wanted, but I think it was just about getting that 3 points. And what United do have is they've got match winners in the side. So if things maybe aren't going quite right, you've got a Rashford or you've got a Fernandes that can just pop up and make a real difference. Yeah, they're in a good position. You just think for them to maybe kick on to that next level, that's what they want to do. But this is going to be a tough game against very hard to beat Thomas Tuchel side at the moment, and it wouldn't put it past them to go and finish 0-0. We'll build it up so much, and it'll be it could be a stalemate. Hopefully not. Hopefully it'll be a real exciting game.
Come on then, Tony. Blowing bubbles forever. Champions League football. Fingers crossed we're all vaccinated. You can go on a European tour. Don't matter how big the Champions League is. Hammers on tour. Is it going to happen?
I'll take Champions League or Europa League, Mark, to be honest. After the season we had, you've got to put in perspective, we nearly got relegated last year. You know, David Moyes has done an outstanding job. The players have responded. You know, for once they've been consistent and good in the transfer market. The last couple of windows, they've brought in the right players. So at last, there's a bit of a happy ship there. So listen, my opinion, we'll see where West Ham are tomorrow, because the one thing I want, I don't expect them to go to the Etihad and win. I really don't, because they're up against a top Manchester City team. There's no doubt about that. What I want to see them do, and I think probably speak for Martin as well, I'll speak for most West Ham fans, go and have a go.
Let's finish with a slightly strange story. After it emerged that Leicester found out about Jack Grealish's injury before their game last weekend, because Leicester noticed that Aston Villa players had removed Grealish from their fantasy league team. So there's a suggestion, Sue, the Premier League players might have to be barred from playing fantasy league, or at least play anonymously, so that this doesn't happen again. I mean, I don't really know where to go with this, but it is quite interesting, actually.
It is. It's quite bizarre, isn't it? I think I can see probably from both ways. I can see different arguments. The fact that the Premier League players play this and they talk about it, I think it's contributed to the massive growth of it. But then you can see there is a conflict of interest there. The fact that, you know, I don't know, that people knew that Grealish was out because of this. I think if you're going to ban the players from doing it, you then have to ban the staff as well, the people that are in and around the training ground, because they're going to be...
wasn't it? Yeah. I think it was the staff.
Was it the staff? Was it?
I think it was the staff as much as anybody. Yeah. Coaches and stuff like that, and people in the medical staff and everything.
But you could go the other way round, couldn't you? Actually, you could pretend that Grealish was injured and take him out. And then Leicester go, oh, Grealish is not playing, so they'll be playing like this instead of this. And then, the team sheets are handed in at whatever it is, 10-2, and then Grealish is on the team. So
or you could actually just work on your tactics with your real team and see if you can beat them that way. It's just, on the training ground.
As we all know, Sue, as you and Tony know, now you are not allowed to bet on football at all. If you are involved in football, you cannot bet on any football match, even a non-league one or something abroad. So it may be, and that's including if you're a coach, maybe as Martin says, it's the coaches doing it. Everybody has to be barred. I don't really know what the answer is, to be honest. I don't pretend to do.
I think it's naive, Mark, to think that this is the first time that something's come out of a training ground or that players don't talk to each other. I mean, in our days, all you had was a telephone. But if you were speaking to your mate who played for the opposition and you could easily say something that you didn't mean to or whatever, it comes out and then that can get reported back. So that's always gone on. In the modern era, you've got social media and there's so many ways of communicating with different players from different teams. So that can happen as well. But in terms of the Fantasy League one, I mean, it must be so frustrating for someone like Dean Smith, because you do your tactics, you do your work on the Friday and that, and then all of a sudden it goes, well, the Saturday or whatever it was, and it comes out that, your star man's not playing, at which point it gets through to Brendan Rodgers. Brendan Rodgers can then pick a team accordingly because he knows that the star player's not playing, and you then can work around it and make changes. So you can't, it can't be allowed to happen in the professional game, Mark. I'm talking from the football club's point of view. Forget everything else. You cannot have that happening because you're giving an advantage to the team. And guess what? Leicester beat Aston Villa. So it tells you everything.
That's all we've got time for this week. My thanks to Sue, to Tony and to Martin. Before we go, here's the motorsport presenter Suzy Perry on her love of Wolverhampton Wanderers. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
I'm from Wolverhampton, and it's in our DNA, our genes, it's our religion and all those kind of phrases, but it's true. I'm from a footballing family, so my dad had his own football team, so there wasn't really any choice. It's been a lifelong love for me, and it will be till I die. This will probably come as no surprise, but my favourite ever Wolves player is Steve Bull. What a player, what a human being, a rare gem of a footballer, incredibly loyal. And he saved our team, really, I think back in the late 80s, 90s. A Roy of the Rovers figure, obviously going to play for England from the lower leagues. It was extraordinary. And subsequently, on and off the pitch, he's a legend, really. I mean, anybody in Wolverhampton will tell you what he's done for the town is wonderful. He works with loads of different charities, and he's a good laugh, Steve's a great guy to go and have a few beers with. And when I look back at his 306 goals for Wolves, he's an absolute ledge. April 2018, the game against Derby, because I had never seen a strike like the Neves volley from over 30 yards, maybe the best goal that I've ever seen. I don't think we could believe it. So I went with my girlfriends. This is an all-round experience. We got invited to meet Nuno before the match. It was fantastic to meet him, a very gentle guy, very generous with his time. Then we had the match, which was just mind-blowing, and we all completely lost it with that Neves goal. I mean, it was really a sensation, and we were on the way up to the Premier League anyway. And then after the match, we got to meet Ruben Neves as well. So as an all-round experience, that is pretty hard to beat. But that goal, that stays with me forever. My favourite Wolves manager is Nuno. He's the best manager that we've had since before my lifetime, probably since Stan Cullis. So he's an inspiration for Wolverhampton. We love him. still have a bugbear. I can't forgive Mark McGee for what he did in 1998, leaving Steve Bull on the subs bench far too long and playing Steve Claridge. I mean, you're in an FA Cup semi-final against Arsenal and you've got your best ever goal scorer, one Steve Bull, sitting on the bench, or you could play Steve Claridge, who hasn't scored for Wolves. What are you going to do? And he left it so late that we couldn't get that back, and I still haven't forgiven him for that. A bit salty. The promises that have been made, the promises that have been broken, you know, you get lifted, you get dropped from a great height, and it's happened so many times. We've gone up and down the leagues. So it goes. Stevie Bull's a tatter. He wears an England cap. He plays for Wolverhampton. He is a lovely chap. He scores with his left foot. He scores with his right. And when we play the Albion, he'll score all night. Oh! I feel like we're going back up again now after our blip, worrying blip. So I'm hoping that we'll finish top 10. And I think if we do, it's a really good result. So the first 2 years, obviously we finished 7th, but with the amount of problems that we've had this year and the amount of injuries, I think top 10 will be a good result for us. So double fingers crossed.